So recently, Fico, the head of the Slovakian state, has visited Russia. As we know, Slovakia has been the country that has been super dependent on Russian oil through its refineries. Slovakia has been refining Russian oil. There has been attention about the new sanction package by the European Union recently because there has been a disagreement about prolonging Czechoslovakia's dependence on Russian refined oil. And Czechoslovakia said, you know what? We can do without the Russian oil. That's fine. Let's get this package sorted, this sanction package. But Slovakia said, hold on. Czechoslovakia might do without the refined Russian oil, but we cannot do without Russian crude oil, which we then refine. We want it. We want it still. We're not looking for energy alternatives. We want to keep refining Russian oil. And in addition to that, Slovakia has been pretty openly against European aid to Ukraine. Um, the Slovakian government has been so anti-Ukraine, in fact, that the Slovakian citizens, on their own accord, have done a fundraiser to gather money to give it to Czechoslovakia to aid it in its artillery shell initiative. Czechoslovakia was gathering money to buy artillery shells from a third-party source and send it to Ukraine. Slovakia, the Slovakian government would not support it in any way, and so the Slovakian citizens took it upon themselves to support the initiative, which was mocked openly by the Slovakian government. And now I'm giving you sort of like a broad strokes picture as to Slovakia's position when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to European Union's aid to Ukraine, or even the Slovakian citizens' view on the subject. And now we had a visit to Russia by Fico, the head of Slovakian government, which was heavily criticized among others, of course, by Zelensky, who said that Ukrainian people are fighting for their life and Fico and Slovakia are fighting for money, fighting for the bottom line. That was the harsh criticism that Zelensky had of Fico. And now, after this meeting, Putin has announced that Slovakia, actually, the super anti-Ukraine country, could be the host for the Russia-Ukraine peace talks. That's after this little intro that I've done about what exactly Slovakia's relation to Russia as well as Ukraine as well as the European Union is. We can get to this newest development, which is Vladimir Putin saying Slovakia could host Russia-Ukraine peace talks. Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into it a bit. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that Russia is open to a Slovakian proposal to host peace talks with Ukraine to end a conflict he said Russia was determined to bring to a conclusion, which is not exactly true. If Russia was so determined to bring the conflict to a conclusion, then it would not be bombing Ukraine daily during the holidays, would it? It would show some form of goodwill if it would really be so determined to bring the end to the conflict. But it's not. It's all smoke and mirrors. Russia is actually not eager at all to bring a conclusion to the conflict, especially considering what a strong pro-war lobby there is right now within Russia. Let's not kid ourselves about the whole Russia is so determined to bring this conflict to. I mean, it sort of is, but on a very specific list of demands. Putin, who this week hosted Slovakian Prime Minister, which I mentioned, Slovakian Prime Minister visit to Russia, criticized by Volodymyr Zelensky. Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico in the Kremlin Putin said that Fico, an outspoken opponent of European Union support for Ukraine, had offered his country as to host talks between Russia and Ukraine. I've noticed a pretty similar thing about Hungary, I will mention Hungary, of course, as well. We're gonna make it a joint segment. Slovakia and Hungary are gonna be a joint segment. Putin said that the Slovakian authorities would be happy to provide their own country as a platform for negotiations. We are not opposed. I wonder why. I wonder why Russia is not opposed to Slovakia acting as a host to any sort of talks. If it comes to that, why not? Since Slovakia takes such a neutral position, being anti-aid to Ukraine, being dependent on Russian crude oil, mocking its own citizens for gathering money for Ukraine, that is a neutral position, apparently. That is the most neutral position possible, I guess. It just doesn't get more neutral than this, does it? It's impossible. Neutral position. Give me a break. You might as well say that Hungary has a neutral position. Slovakia is seen as one of a growing camp of Central and Eastern European EU member states that are skeptical of support for Ukraine and supportive of negotiations with Russia. So, in other words, I hate to repeat it again, but no, not neutral at all. Pro-Russian. Pro-Russian is not a neutral position. Ukrainian President Volodymyr, and of course, I have to mention this here. If things go wrong in Romania with its government, with its if Russia manages to meddle in Romania, then Poland would basically be the only neighbor of Ukraine that would be pro-Ukraine. Just take that in and feel the horrifying implications. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly criticized Slovakia, which borders Ukraine, for the friendly tone Fico has struck towards Russia since his return to power after an election in 2023. Putin has repeatedly said that Russia is open to talks to end the conflict with Kyiv, but that it would nevertheless achieve its goals in Ukraine. Putin said on Thursday that Russia could use the new intermediate-range hypersonic ballistic missile known as Oreshnik, Russia's ultimate weapon, Russia's final weapon, again, but was in no hurry to do so. We do not exclude the possibility of using it both today and tomorrow, if necessary, Putin said. If necessary, Putin said, Russia could use more powerful intermediate-range weapons. We could always go more powerful. We are almighty Russia. And there is a second country that basically goes hand in hand with Slovakia, and that of course is Hungary, with Viktor Orbán, who openly says that Vladimir Putin is a honest and good partner. Viktor Orbán, who blames the stagnant economy of his country on the war that Ukraine wages against the invader, promises his people that the war will end definitely in 2025, either through negotiation or one of the parties losing, says that once the war ends in 2025, definitely, Hungarian economy will see a boom because politics will go from war to peace. That is basically Orbán's whole view on this. And of course, Orbán would like to be the mediating party as well, just like Slovakia. In fact, I'm going to be honest, Hungary's been even worse than Slovakia in some regards. Certain things that Orbán has said publicly have left me just appalled. has just let me open jawed. Like when recently Viktor Orban has said that actually the West is responsible for, the West is at fault for war in Ukraine. The West is to be blamed for the war in Ukraine because it all would have been good if the West would not have given Ukraine the means to defend itself. But Viktor Orban is saying directly that Russia should have been allowed to roll all over Ukraine. That is Viktor Orban's position. If only Ukraine was not given any means to defend itself against Russia, that would have been the preferable outcome in his mind. That would have been the good path for the West to take. And then he says, but the West did provide Ukraine with aid, and it's bad in Orban's view. So he would definitely love for to be at the table when it comes to negotiation, some form of pro Russian negotiation, of course. And of course, he threw his own little freezing of the conflict proposal. Zelensky has not so long ago criticized Orban, saying that Hungary does not really understand the danger that it's in. I'm paraphrasing. That what army does Hungary have? How is Hungary supposed to defend itself against Russia? With nice words? With humor? Something along those lines. To which Orban responded by saying, there's a freeze conflict proposal on the table. Take it or leave it. That's basically the attitude of Hungary. And this sort of pro-Russian sentiment, both from Slovakia as well as Hungary, is very worrying, this sentiment, especially in the face of the Trump presidency, because at this time, especially when there's a possibility, there's still a non-zero possibility that Trump will just decide to screw over Ukraine. And in that case, with that possibility in mind, Europe, the European Union, should offer a unified stance, a unified front against this sort of solution. The European Union should come to Trump united and say, no, we must support Ukraine. But if Slovakia and Hungary are breaking rank, are breaking this unity within the European Union, then this task becomes much, much, much harder. And I guess that is my final takeaway from all this. While Slovakia and Hungary are dreaming of becoming hosts to peace talks, the unified front that the European Union is supposed to present to Trump and say, listen, you need us, you do business with us, we are helpful to you in your dealings with China, for example, but in exchange, you need to help us help Ukraine. That should be the unified front. But with things like this, I just don't know. I just don't know if such a front is possible. I've been skeptical before, and things like this only add to my skepticism. All right, that's a segment. That's a segment on Slovakia and Hungary. What did you think? Anything informative and nice and new, or did you all already know all of that? And I just